Hello and welcome to the No Balls Podcast. I'm your host, Patrick McDonald. With me, co-host Sheldon Kaufman. This is episode 13 of the NBA Preseason show. We're here for the Detroit Pistons. This probably, I don't know if this would be an awaited one, but this is one that I think should be very interesting. Do you have any notes that you want to get out the way here before we get started?
I'm gonna just let everything speak for itself. You go ahead.
The stuff does indeed speak for itself. Yeah, we'll get started here. This Pistons team is not a normal Pistons team to start. 14-68, worst team in the league. And interestingly with them, their expected record was 20-62, so they were 6 wins worse than they were expected to be based on their net rating. Of course they were. Another thing about them, this team had 40 home games versus the normal 41. And instead of the normal 60 or 52 games against the East and 30 against the West, they had 51 against the East and 31 against the West. So just a really, really weird thing. I think it had to do with the play-in. Two teams got, or not the play-in, the
tournament,
the tournament,
the NBA in-season tournament.
Yeah, I think two teams got shorted a home game, and then I think two other teams gained a home game. We'll get in. It'll come up later for sure, but really weird. Anyway, at home in their 40 home games, they were 7-33. On the road, they were 7-35 in their 42 road games. Very interesting. It really confused me when I saw that because I did not know this within the season. Pre-All-Star break, they were 8-46. Not good. Tad bit better post-All-Star break, 6-22. Again, highlighted in that the record-breaking losing streak. Not winning for an entire calendar month. A bunch of just bad stuff about this team. 10-41 versus the East, and then 4-27 versus the West. Either way, they were not good. Big reason why they didn't reach their expected record. 8-27 in clutch games. That was the worst in the NBA. Again, if they were in a close game that should ideally be close to 50-50, they were not close to 50-50 in those games. In other games, 6-41, not much better either. So, yeah, do you have anything on this record standpoint before we get into the numbers?
It's just a really bad team. Obviously, it's the worst team in the league. Yeah, they just couldn't win. I really don't know what I can say.
This is like the worst show on the court, I think is the way to put it.
You need to coin that.
Or maybe the best show, depending on how you want to, if you're a hater or not.
Oh, yeah. If you're a Detroit Pistons hater.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll break it down. Offense, defense. 109 offensive rating, 27th in the league. 118 defensive rating, 25th in the league. Overall, a -9 net rating, which was 29th in the league, only behind the Charlotte Hornets. If we break it down into the offense, defense, we go into offense, 24th in transition offense. It's actually a tad bit better than their overall offense, but not very good at transition offense. Pick and roll ball handler efficiency, 22nd. But similarly to the Hornets, who were also really bad at running pick and rolls, they ran it all the time. They were second highest frequency in running something they were not good at. 28th percentile in pick and roll ball handler efficiency. Not good. Roll man aspect of it, 12th in pick and roll man efficiency. 25th frequency, 62nd percentile. This is pretty solid right here. Now you get to the post-up section, 20th in post-up efficiency, 22nd in frequency with it, 35th percentile, not very good. And then 21st in ISO efficiency, 21st in frequency, 31st percentile, not very good there either. So their lone bright spot here was their roll man stuff. They were 20th in offensive rebounding, 25th in three-point percentage, 27th in attempts, 19th in pull-up three percentage, 20th in attempts. Not a good shooting team either. Do you have any stuff to hit on with their offense here?
I'm gonna we'll probably wait for the scheme stuff, but it just kind of speaks on how kind of I guess I guess diamond in the rough, kind of good players on bad teams. Jalen Duran and Isaiah Stewart, pretty good for them last year.
Yeah.
Running that pick and roll.
Yeah, and a lot of the time it was them running two bigs out there. We'll get into that in the scheme um, section. Um, yeah, I mean, just not a good offensive product here whatsoever. But let me tell you, it does indeed get a little bit worse here. You can see their defense, like we said, 25th in the league, 20th in transition defense. Actually, not too bad there, but we get into next the half court defense, 27th in pick and roll ball handler defense, 8th highest frequency, so teams were running it all the time on them, 10th percentile, not good. Now you get to the pick and roll defense, 28th in pick and roll defense. Again, teams knew it, 5th frequency, 7th percentile, not very good. Then you get to post-ups, 30th in post-up defense, 7th frequency, 0 percentile, not good. And then isolation defense, 29th in the league, 12th highest frequency. Teams knew it, 3rd percentile. So they were 10, 7, 0, and 3rd percentile. Combined 20. Combined 20 here. This was so far. This is the worst I have gone and seen. Looking at it, do you have anything on their defense?
I mean, oh, sorry.
One thing I do want to say, 5th in defensive rebounding. I'll let you get the floor for a second on their defense.
I was just gonna say, like, if you looked at any Pistons box score, the other team was gonna have over 125 points, or 100 over 115, over 120 points. I mean, this team just simply couldn't defend. They got killed in every aspect. It was kind of what we've talked about some teams like this before, kind of the AAU type of style, kind of just guys trying to score, not giving a shit about defense. It's a young team. I mean, young teams are usually not the best defensive teams. Yeah, but just really, really bad. I mean,
yeah, like
it's laughable. Yeah.
Laughable is exactly how I would describe it. Just not at all. It's really any good stuff going on here with Detroit, specifically on the defensive end. We get into the coaching. Big reason why that is the coaching stuff. That we're not going to deny that. Monty Williams, highest paid coach in NBA history last season. He did not put forth the effort necessarily. I think day one on media day, he said that he was literally there just because the money. I think some of that is on the Pistons. I think it was a mutual parting with Monty and the Suns last season. Monty wanted to go be there with his wife, who had been diagnosed with cancer. And the only reason he took the Pistons job is because it was a serious amount of money that he literally couldn't decline.
Yeah.
And then, you get into all this stuff Monty did wrong. You can search up Pistons fans. They will tell you all the things Monty did wrong. In the lineups part that does show this, it was a lot of two big stuff, and the bigs that they had were not good enough to run two bigs at the same time a lot of the time. Uh, and then there was a lot of all bench lineups out there. Um, like none of their starters playing. That barely ever happens in the NBA. It was just really, really weird stuff. Um, and then Jaden Ivey being benched for a good part of the season for Killian Hayes, like just a bunch of weird stuff. Just seems like the guy doesn't care, and he probably didn't. Realistically,
Yeah.
he was guaranteed that money anyway. Probably wanted to get fired. um, so we get into this next coach, JB Bickerstaff from the Cavs. We just did the Cavs episode. Interestingly enough, he did a lot of the stuff that the Pistons did last year, but like actually did it well.
Mhm.
Two guard lineups, two big lineups. He didn't do the all bench lineups. That was like the identity of the Cavs last season, is that they were doing shifts almost with one of their bigs and one of their guards. Hopefully he can bring that to Detroit, because it really worked with Mitchell and Garland. Hopefully he can make that work with Caden Ivey or Caden, whoever you think the other guard is here. Um, you have any notes on GB Bickerstaff?
Yeah, so talking about that, the thing with the Pistons last year, a lot of the times on the pick and roll, the ball handler would keep the ball and try and go score. When we see an offense like the Cavs, the ball handler is on that pick and roll is looking to get it to Allen or Mobley. I'd like to see Bickerstaff implement that more, and I think let Jalen Duran, really unlock his offensive abilities down there. Let Isaiah Stewart be physical. Um, let Paul Reed, who we're about to talk about, get some points. Maybe even Tobias Harris. I, I mean, I think that he can fix a lot what the Pistons did wrong. Um, yeah, I mean, a big thing was for me was that that I saw was that the Pistons would a lot of times when they ran that pick and roll just not even really give a second thought to Duran. And I mean, that was just how they ran their offense. It was a lot of stationary shooters, not a lot of not a lot of off ball movement.
Yeah, and the thing with their shooters is they were not shooters either. Like
No.
last season, Kevin Knox had to start games for them because he was one of their better shooters. Like, my lord, uh, it's crazy.
Yeah.
And there would be a lot of situations where Cade's operating with him being the best shooter out there.
Mhm.
And then you look into the lineup data, a lot of their better lineups, they at least had a shooter out there, whether it was Fontecchio or Bogey or Mike Muscala for the short time he was there. It was
Gallinari.
Gallinar. Like it's just a lot of the answers they had were just like, well, I guess this fixes it a little bit. No, just overall, just a horribly constructed team is how I would put the issues they were dealt with, and then the coach just not really wanting to fix the things that were going on. Uh, yeah, that's what I got on them. Other coaches that I, you know, thought were interesting bringing up. Sidney Lowe, he had coached under JB in Cleveland. He comes over. They have former Rockets head coach Steven Silas. He'd also coached with Dallas as an assistant, a couple other teams as an assistant. Very knowledgeable basketball coach. And then the big one for them, Fred Vincent. Uh, you know, NBA world knows him as the shot doctor. He's a really good shooting coach. They also have David Holpa as their titled shooting coach. So these two guys are working together to work with some of their non-shooters. Big ones for Fred Vincent. Helped Lonzo Ball develop his shot. Brandon Ingram, Herb Jones, Najee Marshall was really big for them in New Orleans. And you'll see with how Detroit's built their roster, they really think that this is a real thing for them, that Fred Vincent can help develop shooters more than other teams can. So, you have any scheme talk here? Um,
I mean, I think I pretty much mentioned it
yeah,
uh, with the pick and roll stuff. Drop coverage with their centers, switch with the wings and guards.
Yeah,
Obviously, it didn't work, but it's what they did.
yeah, and you know we'll talk. But Duran, I think there is maybe a little bit more switchability to be tapped into. It's just Duran and Stewart were often out there, and it seemed like a disinterested team on defense as well.
Yeah.
We'll get forward into their off season, their draft. I had hold up. They brought in a new general manager, Trajan Langdon, uh, replaced Troy Weaver as the president of basketball operations. Uh, you know, he didn't have any prior experience as a general manager. Um, actually, this is telling me he was the general manager of the Pelicans for a little bit. I'm not sure if that's actually true. Um, anyway, this offseason he brought in new head coach, like we said, with JB Bickerstaff. They also had a pretty eventful offseason. We'll start with the draft. Any of these guys you want to highlight? Uh, I'll give you the floor on that.
I mean, we'll go ahead and talk about their first round pick, Ron Holland. From the G League Ignite, I believe, last year, 6'8", 205. This is I kind of see him as a more of a slashing kind of player, really good at attacking closeouts and slashing to the basket. His penetration is very good. It helps. He really uses it to help lead to kick out threes, and he's a really good defender. I like his potential to be a lockdown perimeter kind of guy with his size and length. Um, he has to improve on some stuff, shot decisions. Not really a great shot taker behind the 3 point line. Evident to his 24% from the line last year, or 24% from behind the arc last year. Um, he needs to make better decisions as a playmaker. Uh, just he's kind of a secondary playmaker right now. If he really needs to improve a little bit to become more of a primary kind of guy, and he needs to get better at shooting threes. Obviously,
Yeah,
but yeah, that's what I got on him.
yeah. So I really liked Ron. I think you had mentioned earlier in on the season. You had asked me who I would think the Wizards should take. I think Ron was the guy who I had brought up to you. Not because I think he can be the guy. I really don't think he can be, but I think he really knows how to be a really good role player in the league. I do think there is really good role player ceiling with him. Um, Coming into the G League Ignite, he was more of a true 3-4 guy who really would play his ass off on the defensive end, and was kind of just a lob threat on the offensive side of the floor. Not much, like you said, with the shot. With the G League Ignite, he had to do a lot more of the creation stuff, and I think that was really, it was positive for his draft stock, I would think. Um, I'm not sure how much better he probably got as a player because of it, but like you said, he's really good at attacking closeouts. I think he's excellent at that, and he gets up there for sure. Um, like you said, struggles to shoot outside. One thing that I do want to mention on that, he was pretty like unfazed. Maybe not unfazed is the word because he just wasn't good in general, but he didn't really see a drop off shooting off the dribble, especially when you look at his confidence. He was pretty confident shooting that ball, but he just wasn't very good at it.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, he was really great finishing at the rim, and he's a pretty solid cutter as well. He looks like he does really know the game. Um, Other stuff I did have on him, playmaking side, you had hinted at it. I think his handle's all right. Um, it's good enough to get to the rim. He really just struggles when the floor gets shrinked on him. I think teams really took advantage of that, and that was really highlighted by him having to do probably too much for the G League Ignite offense last season. Getting to the rim additionally, this is the key for him that I think he needs to bring up. Obviously, get stronger, but the key with that is he often avoids contact going to the rim, which means he doesn't get a ton of free throws. If he can put on some strength and get some more contact at the rim, I think he could actually maybe develop into a really solid scorer, regardless of that jump shot. And when it looked like he was comfortable playmaking, he makes the basic passing reads. But his sometimes he would turn the ball over a little bit too much, like overshooting passes a little bit. And like you said, his defense is great. Like I don't know how he played with so much intensity, given what he had to do on offense for the G League last year. But this is a guy who should be able to guard 2 through 4, and then slower guards and weaker centers. Like he maybe not right away, but he should be able to do it. He can block shots at the rim. He can guard from 30 feet away. Like he's really solid. He just needs to be engaged a little bit more and not pick up some silly fouls. But I really like Ron's game for everything except his shooting. Um, yeah. Did you get anything on Bobby Clintman?
Yeah, I got a little bit on him. He's a really good shooter for his size, 6'9", 225. Good catch and shooter. 36% from the 3-point line last year. He moves well without the ball, cutting to the rim. Really good. Versatile defender. He can guard, you know, pretty much 2 through 5. I would say, and he's a pretty good rebounder too. Um, he was a freshman last year, I believe, so he's really unproven. Didn't really get a lot of. I think he only played 33. Didn't really get a lot of much playing time. Only had 5 points per game last year, so I don't see him being an immediate starter, but definitely has a lot of tools that can become a really good role player. He can't really create his own shot. He's not a great playmaker. Not very strong. Like I said, role player. I think he'll be a strong role player. They'll definitely keep. I could see him being in the. Actually, it's the Pistons, so he'll probably get some playing time this year, I'm sure. Um, but yeah, I think he still needs a little bit to develop, but not a bad pick at all. A lot of potential here.
Yeah, a lot of people really like Bobby. I believe um, he had also been played overseas. He was a sophomore this season. I went ahead and checked on that.
Sophomore. Okay.
Yeah, so he had previously been talked about getting drafted in the first round last season. But then he went back to college. His stock fell a good bit. Um, I don't know. A lot of it with him is him being a lot better in theory than he is in
Yeah.
reality. He's 6'9" and he could shoot, but struggles a little bit more than you would want to rebound and protect the rim. Um, and he's similar to a guy who we're going to talk about later. He's kind of just all right at guarding a ton of positions. He's not really great at guarding any of them. And then you don't want him on point guards or bigger centers. So that's just how I feel about Bobby. I think he's a solid pickup though, for sure, with the 37th pick. We can get into their additions and subtractions here. The guy who I just hinted at was Tobias Harris. Um, they signed him to a $51 million over 2 seasons contract, 15% of the cap. I guess it's fine, is how I would describe this. They weren't going to get anything anyway with this money, so you might as well just go ahead and spend it to at least get something, is how I feel about it. Tobias, yeah, he can kind of shoot, he can kind of defend, and he can go into his own difficult shot making bag a little bit if you really want that around your young players. But I don't know. I think it's just a fine signing. It's not going to end up winning the Pistons that many games. Um,
Yeah. Oh,
you
my
got
bad.
it. You got it.
Yeah, I mean, Tobias Harris. We talked about him a little bit in the Philly episode. Kind of fell out with fans there. He got a lot of money and ended up not being that guy. So, like you said, it's a decent signing. I mean, he's decent at a lot of things. Nothing really excites you about him. He does have ability to score on his own, if you need him to. But I mean, if you get a Tobias Harris that got that contract, it's going to look great. I don't think you are going to get him. I think you're going to get just kind of the mid Tobias Harris we've been seeing over the past couple years.
Yeah.
So, I mean, It's a signing.
Yeah, and
It was
it's like,
it's one of the more strange ones, but yeah.
and like nobody's gonna freak out over Tobias Harris. Like, I don't think we have to be people who simmer it down. I think the general consensus on this deal was a kind of negative. I think it's just whatever. They're not gonna. I'm not going crazy over Tobias. You know, he's an NBA player, an above average NBA player for sure. Malik Beasley, he is an NBA player. I wouldn't call him an above average one. He can shoot. Last season, he really shot for Milwaukee. He got a 1 year deal to come to Detroit. I think it's perfectly fine. Good signing. You'd probably move him at the deadline. Um, yeah. Do you have anything on Malik?
No, like you said, good shooter, 41% from 3-point line. I think he can score in bunches. Good signing.
Yeah.
Dude, they just got it. They got a solid guy. I
Not
mean,
much to say.
a lot of these guys are role players that are going to be thrust into a starting role.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see what if they shine or not. But I mean, good sign. I mean, like you said, just a really good shooter.
Yeah. Uh, Other big addition for them, Paul Reed. They claimed him off waivers from Philly because Philly wanted to void his salary, so Detroit claimed him. 16 million over 2 seasons is what's remaining on that. That's 5% of the salary cap. Perfectly good stuff. I think Paul Reed's a solid NBA player. I reasonably could say that he's probably as good as Jalen Duren last season. Um, and I'm sure Pistons fans don't like to hear that, but that's the reality of what your team was last year. Paul Reed could very well be starting next season
Yeah.
if he really proves it for y'all. Other additions for them. Wendell Moore Jr. they brought in from trade from Minnesota. Kind of a young guy who hasn't gotten much run yet. And then Tim Hardaway Jr. they ended up picking up from Dallas. Again, it's Tim Hardaway Jr. He's streaky. He is on the last year of his contract. Dallas didn't want him anymore. It's a perfectly fine flyer to take. Losses they had.
I'm gonna do a quick prediction right here.
All right.
I think Tim Hardaway pops off and gets paid big money next year. Like he gets paid. Gets paid like above what you like. You know what I'm saying? I think I think I can see him getting overpaid,
Like
and then just ended up being mid.
Maybe not saying that this guy's overpaid, but you think he could get similar value to Sam Hauser?
How much is Hauser getting paid?
He signed 50 over 4.
Yeah, I could see, because like, I mean, let's be real. Hardaway Jr. was nice as fuck for those Mavericks teams, and he's a really good shooter. And he's a vet, but he's like one of those vets that still has some juice in him. And it's the Pistons. I can see him being like a Bogey or an Alec Burks.
Yeah.
Get in there, going crazy, doing pretty good the first half, and then getting traded or staying on the team, but proving that you can kind of like really ball and getting overpaid.
This way,
Quick little prediction, just a little prediction.
Yeah, I'll put it this way: Bogey last season averaged 20 a game for the Pistons, and I mean, I think Bogey's a better overall scorer, but I think Tim's a better shooter. So
yeah, he can.
I mean, if Tim ends up playing his way into the starting lineup, he, could end up definitely getting a bag next offseason. The thing with that is they have a ton of young wings, and I think we'll get into that in the lineup section for sure. But yeah,
I just had to throw that out there real quick.
Yeah, that's for sure a good one. They lost Buddy Bowman. He was on a 2-way deal for them. They lost Troy Brown Jr. Not much for them. Malachi Flynn, 50-point game. Other than that, he's not good. Big loss for them. Evan Fournier and Taj Gibson. Man.
Knicks legends.
Yeah. Neither of those are anything significant. Interesting one. Quentin Grimes didn't get the run he probably should have got in Detroit. They traded him to Dallas. Yeah,
that was weird because he was good for the Knicks. I thought a good 3-point shooter for them.
And they brought him in at the deadline, right?
Yeah.
And now the new ownership comes in, or the new management. And they're like, we're not attached to this guy like the old ownership would have been, and they trade him to Dallas. Shemezi Metu Jalen Noel, Jared Roden, Stanley Umude, and then James Wiseman. It's just a bunch of guys, is how I would describe it. NBA kind of bodies. No, not good NBA players, but they played in the NBA, and they're losing them. Yeah, no, I don't have much on any of those losses, unless you do. Go forward. Cade Cunningham extension. Same deal that Scotty Barnes, Franz Wagner, Evan Mobley just signed. 224 over 5. 269 over 5 if Cade were to make All NBA this season. It's a 25% rookie max extension that could go up to 35 or to 30% if he makes All NBA. Do you have anything on this Cade extension?
I like the Cade extension a lot. I mean, this is a guy. He's a mismatch for guards with his size. So I've seen him listed 6'6". I've seen him listed at 6'8". So I don't really know what his true height is, but still a really tall guard. For his size, I mean, he's a really good playmaker too. 7.5 assists per game last year. And he's also a really good three-level scorer. He can shoot from three. He can finish at the rim. He can hit his mid-range shot. 22 points per game. I think the money is perfect, especially when you talk about the guys that you're comparing him to, got the same amount of money. Franz, Scotty. This is, I think, their future, and they knew that when they drafted him along with Ivy. Yeah, you definitely needed to give him that money.
I agree.
That was the right thing to do for both parties, 100%.
Yeah. And we had already talked about all of those extensions. I think I was positive on the Franz one, neutral on the Scotty one, and negative on the Mobley one. I think Cade's clearly the best player out of all these guys, and it may not be super easy to point to that conclusion right now. And I think a lot of that has to do with his skill set is not going to pop on a team that is this bad.
Yeah.
What Cade does well is he facilitates the game, he slows down the pace, he controls the ball for the team, right? Similar to what we had mentioned with Brunson in the next episode.
Mm-hmm.
The team's not going to turn the ball over any more than Cade turns the ball over because of how well he facilitates the game around him.
Yeah.
Right? I think Cade is awesome. Maybe he's not a number one option in the NBA on a contender, but like if he's your number two option, he's a fantastic playmaker, right? Like even if there's some turnovers to cut out there, like the individual reads that this guy makes, I think like it's not quite at the Halliburton, Trae Young, Luka Doncic level, but I mean he could very well jump up to that level if there's a little bit better team around him next season. Overall, I still really like Cade, and I think he's still definitely the top guy in that class for me. So, yeah, that's all I really have on Cade. We can talk more about some of their other young players because let me tell you, there is nothing in the lineup data that we can point fingers to at all with this team.
Yeah.
Everything was bad. So,
not only that, it's like the team is like so different too. Like Monte Morris, I think, was playing games for the Pistons this year.
mm-hmm. So there's been so
just
much
like it was like a revolving door with the Pistons. In the season, it was crazy.
So much roster turnover, and then there's a new coach and a new general manager now. I don't want to even look back because ideally this team operates way different than they did under a coach who just didn't want to do the job last season. We can talk just about their young players and their lineups now, since there's no lineup data to get to. If we want to talk about Ron, Asar, Ivy Duran, those are some very interesting guys to get to there. If you want, I'll let you get the floor on the first one there.
Oh, okay.
What were you asking, though?
Well, I was gonna say, like, what are your thoughts on Isaiah Stewart? Could you see him being a long-term factor with this team? I like Isaiah Stewart a lot. I think he's
all right. He doesn't rebound or protect the rim really good enough for me at the NBA level. He shoots it fine. For me, he just ends up being an energy big. Maybe he's your second, third big. And he was starting for them last year. I just
Yeah,
I don't see it at this point. I get why people are interested in him, but I feel like he should be more of a change up. But for them, it's their primary pitch
yeah.
with him. So I just don't see it. Those
All right.
three guys I just mentioned are some of the other guys. So yeah,
Yeah, I'll get in. I'll get into that. So, Jaden Ivey. I mean, it's a very interesting 1-2 punch with him and Cade Cunningham. Just because they're both like young. What was Ivy? Was Ivy the number one pick or was he top five?
no. So Cade was number one, and then Ivy went 4 in his
Oh,
draft.
they were the same draft. Okay, okay.
No, and
Yeah,
they were a year apart.
okay, that's what I thought. I was about to say. Yeah, so yeah, they're both young top five picks. The thing about Ivy doesn't have the best 3 point or the best score. He doesn't really have the scoring ability that Cade Cunningham does, in my opinion. He's really quick though, really good at scoring around the rim, and his defensive upside is pretty high. Guard 6'4". He's a really long, I don't know the exact number, but he's a really long wingspan, good length, um, good secondary playmaker. We talked about how you talked about how good Cade Cunningham was. And a guy like Jaden Ivey, he doesn't really control the game as much as Cade Cunningham does, but he does make the right passes that leads, to really good scoring opportunities. And if he can just get his 3 point shot more consistent, I think it just opens up stuff for the Pistons. 33% last year. We saw at Purdue that he can do a lot more than that. And he's just gonna have to pick it up. But Jaden Ivey's really interesting. I like him a lot. It's just yeah, I like Jaden Ivey. I think
Yeah,
he's good.
I think him and Cade contrasting next to each other is just so interesting because you have Cade who's more of like a really cerebral processor who knows the game fundamentally really well, and then Ivy's this super bursty guy, maybe more in the realm of like your Scoot Henderson type of guys who are just burst and
Yeah.
crazy athletic.
Yep.
Again, Cade definitely has the more refined scoring game, but Ivy has that downhill ability that literally you cannot take away. He's that explosive downhill. And like you said, he can leverage that into good playmaking opportunities. I think they fit well together just because Cade, I think, is a really good off ball shooter. I feel
Yeah.
like his catch and shoot was close to 40% this season. I think they're a perfectly fine fit together. They're both tall, too, so I don't understand why they couldn't have played together. They can both pass, they can both shoot well enough, they can both guard. Um,
Yeah.
Maybe they haven't showed it yet, but they have the size and athleticism to guard. So,
Yeah.
um,
You want me to get
during
into?
during Asar and we had already talked about um, uh, what's it? I've completely been blanking his name. The
Ivy
draft pick.
Stewart? Who?
The guy they just drafted. Oh, what's
Ron Holland.
Ron Holland? There we go.
Yeah.
My brain was trying to tell me Sadiq Bey, but I knew it was
Come on, bro.
Asar is really interesting because
Yeah.
on one of the worst defensive teams in the league last year, there was this rookie who was a crazy good defensive player. Um, how do we feel about Asar?
Like you said, great defensive player. I don't know what the offense is really. He shot 18% last year from the 3 point line. Just like not good. I mean, especially what this team is. I don't see Asar being a guy that can handle the pick and roll or really, set screens. It's He's one of the more interesting ones. I think he's a lockdown defender. And if he can get his offensive game up, it'll help him that much more.
Yeah, I with Asar, I'll say this: going into the draft cycle last year, he was supposed to be of the two of him and Amin Thompson. He was supposed to be the better shooter of the two, and it wasn't good, man.
Yeah,
And then like the shooting indicators, like his free throw percentage and the percentage of his shots that were pull ups, also weren't good. He shot 60% from the free throw line last year. It's really hard to project him to be a good enough uh, offensive player. And like his misses are like horrible.
Yeah.
Like his miss compilation is elite. Like you'll see every miss in the book with him. But I find it impossible to project his offense to really be great. He was also expected to be a pretty solid passer coming into the league. That might take a second to show, but I don't know if his offense is really good enough to show it. And I'll have to pull up this guy's rookie stats because this is one that really it could be comparable. Um, Asar again, he's still a really good defender and rebounder, and the name that comes up for me, um, although he shot really good in his rookie season, but is Josh Hart. But looking back at it, Josh Hart's actually been a solid enough 3-point shooter for his whole career. So I don't know if his ceiling is worse than Josh Hart, then I don't see how he's really a great rotational NBA player.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. The comparison definitely there. I like the Josh Hart comparison, except Asar Thompson's like 4 planets away from being as good as a shooter as Josh Hart.
Yeah, but
Um,
even that's like fringy. Like Josh Hart's
yeah,
shooting
no, yeah,
really streaky.
Josh Hart's a super streaky shooter. So
Yeah, and with Asar too, like we mentioned it with Ron earlier. Like Ron at least has a lot of. You could think he could still be a good scorer just by his ability to get downhill into the rim. Asar, I think he's really athletic, but he just doesn't really have the handle or the feel. Is what popped for me last year. I don't know. He's gonna have to really take steps forward for me to really believe that he's one of their guys.
yeah, I think we're both kind of feeling that he's definitely one of the weaker out of the young guys, just because of how bad his offense is, or how we know that there's not much of a ceiling with the offense.
Yeah, I mean we're seeing now this late in his career, like Matisse Thybulle is getting played out of rotations because he can't shoot. Like he's getting better at it. I think this is something we'll highlight in the Portland episode. But like if you can't shoot it, it doesn't matter how good of a defender you are. I think Matisse was a better defender in his rookie season than Asar
Matisse was
was.
Matisse was locked down.
Like
He
that was
was
probably
Matisse was nice.
that was one of the better perimeter defenders I've ever like seen.
Yeah, no, crazy.
Um, I don't. Asar needs to impress me next season. Um, is the thing I want to say. Duran, we can touch on Duran. I he's renowned as a really solid young player. I don't see it. His feels a little bit off. His instincts on the defensive side are probably a little slow. And then he's already not like super tall. He's a little slim compared to a lot of centers. I believe he's still close to 7 feet tall still, but
Like
uh,
6'10",
yeah, he's 6'10".
6'11". Yeah,
Yeah, and then he's not a crazy at the rim lob finisher either. Um, I'm interested in what his wingspan is. So maybe that's a little lacking. Maybe his length is a little lacking. Um, Basically, if you can't tell from what I'm saying, I don't think Duran's much better than an average NBA starter. Um, and again, with him, like I could see him proving me wrong a little bit more than Asar, but he would have to prove me wrong to be.
yeah. I think that he could definitely prove you wrong more than Asar can. Um, he averaged a double double last year. Not saying much because he was on the Pistons. My biggest thing, and you kind of talked about it, I think maybe not, but he can't really score without help, like without someone playmaking for him. That be finishing around the rim, lob threats, stuff like that. Some things you said wasn't his strong suit. He can't shoot at all. I don't even think he took a 3-point attempt last year. If he did, he didn't make it. Um, but I mean, there's a lot of positives with him. I I
Yeah,
can see him being pretty good.
and we had touched on it, I think, briefly in the Cavs episode with Mobley that he kind of just looks lost in the short roll.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Jalen Duren's like that, but even just a little bit worse.
Yeah.
He just looks a little. It looks like a deer in headlights when he gets the ball in the middle of the floor with nobody guarding him. It's just I don't know. I would he has to improve at the very least. Um, but I mean I did like him coming out of the draft, but it hasn't showed up in the NBA yet. Um, do we want to get forward to predictions with them?
Yeah, I'm good.
So first, let's start. Do we think they got better?
I'm gonna say yeah.
I'm
I'm gonna
gonna.
say I'm gonna say they got better. Just because I mean, I'm gonna say they got better on paper.
Mhm.
Not in.
Because
I mean, let's be real. They brought in Tim Hardaway Jr., Tobias Harris, Paul Reed. Those are all better than the guys they have. Like those are all starters on this team.
yeah, very
Maybe
good.
not Tim Hardaway, but we'll get into it to the lineup stuff. What I think it's gonna be, but like I mean, I think they got most of the guys they added are going into their starting lineup week day one. I think they got better. I mean, how much is better? But
Yeah,
I will say they got. I'm gonna say they got better.
yeah. So I'm gonna say they got better just for like prayers for Pistons fans because I hope they don't have to watch that season again. I don't know how much better they got. Like you said, like they probably got like 2% better from last season. Um, yeah, we didn't do the lineup section. We can both just pencil in Cade and Ivy at the guard spots.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I yep. I had the same thing.
Okay. What did you have on the rest? 'Cause I
I
think it's
went I went Malik Beasley and then Tobias Harris and Jalen Duran. I think Malik Beasley gives you the shooting that they did not have. Like you said, they weren't. You said like I said they were surrounded by stationary shooters. Like you said, those shooters weren't shooters. Put Malik Beasley in there, that gives you a real shooter. And I got Tobias Harris. I mean Tobias Harris. Yeah, he played. Yeah, the stuff in Philly happened in Philly. Um, I think Tobias Harris is going to be those one of those tank leaders. He's gonna put up
15.
probably near maybe 20
Yeah,
if he goes
I
crazy.
can see it.
And I think Jalen Duran starts, but I could also see Paul Reed starting.
Yeah.
You kind of alluded to it, but I think Jalen Duran gets a start just because he's younger and they want to play the young guys. Um, but what do you think?
I think just from the money, it has to still be Tobias.
Yeah,
With them, they have Duran and Reed. If I had to pick a player right now, I think Reed's actually the better player. Um, I would assume they at least like Duran and he's young, so they want to play him. But I don't know. I could see it going either way with the center position with Reed and Duran. And notice how we're talking about this. Stewart doesn't come up. I think that's a little telling. I think Stewart's a good third big. I think you know he's in the role that he needs to be now. Um, and I think their center rotation definitely got better because now they can actually play Stewart as a center if they need to. The wings are interesting. Like we said before, they're kind of entitled to play Tobias. Um, that small forward spot is really interesting. I don't know. It's
they
probably
also because they also have Simone
Fontecchio.
Fontic. Yeah, I think they gave him a 2-year deal this offseason too.
Yeah, and
Um,
I really like Fontecchio. I think his playmaking is really interesting for them, and he's a really good shooter. Um,
yep, versatile
I
too.
I think that he could be the guy there at the three. If they don't want to play one of their younger guys, um, I'm pulling up their projected depth chart right now because um, I want to make sure I'm not forgetting anybody.
They got Marcus Sasser.
Yeah, so
Uh,
Sasser, I like. He's definitely going to be their third guard with Cade and Ivy being the first two.
Dennis Jenkins.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, so how I see it, I mean, it's probably going to be either Fontecchio or Hardaway starting at that three spot. Um, yeah, just, you're picking between like three rocks here, is how it works.
I'll be rooting for Hardaway for my prediction. I'm gonna be rooting for his 50 million next year.
So we can
Four
see
over 50,
the part
50
two of
over
the
four.
Dion Waiters Tim Hardaway shootout. Yeah. Yeah, we should pretty much be done now. We can get into offensive MVP, defensive MVP, X factor for them. What you got?
Yeah, I mean, like I want to go one guy at one position, but it's since it's the Pistons, I'm gonna break my own rule. So I'm gonna go Cade, offensive player of the year. Defensive player, I'm gonna go Thompson for all the reasons we talked about. And Cade, I think Cade is his team. You talked about it. He facilitates everything. Like I said, 7.5 assists per game last year. Huge part of their um, playmaking side of things. And in those clutch games, they sucked terribly at. I mean, he was the only one that could really score. And for that reason, I'm also putting him as my X factor. I mean, I guess if I'll put someone else, I'll say Tobias Harris. But
Yeah.
I mean, I just think Cade Cunningham brings more to the table if he like turns out to be like really really good. If Tobias Harris gets like 25 points per game, you're still going to be 14, 16 wins,
Yeah.
20 wins maybe. Not really important. But if Cade Cunningham goes crazy, I think that adds a little bit more. So I mean that's just what I got.
Yeah, so going into the season, I was actually really high on the Pistons, which for that meant like I thought they could be a playing team, like a 10th seed playing team last year. It
Oh,
was
last
because
year.
I was really, really high on Cade. He's definitely their offensive MVP for me. I think this season with better other players around him, I think he could really take a leap. Maybe not so much in the scoring department, but maybe his efficiency gets a lot better and he play makes a lot more. He could be a guy who averages 23 and 8, 23 and 9 next season for them. I'm really high on Cade. I like his game. He's my offensive MVP. For me, I have the same guy as defensive and X Factor. I have Asar because I think he has the biggest swing if he hits the upside. If Asar can at least stay on the floor offensively next season, then he's the only guy who I think can even be like a 1A, the best defender, perimeter point of attack defender on this team, because other than that, they really don't have one. Um, and then, if he can stay on the floor offensively, I think that really, really helps them uh, overall, like for not just the offense, because they can get that offense from Tim Hardaway Jr. and Fontecchio and Tobias Harris, but they can't get that defense from any of those guys. And if Sar can stay on the floor, I mean, I think that actually does make it to where they are a better team next year.
So you said by both guys you meant Asar for defensive MVP and X Factor?
Yeah, I put
Okay,
him from
word.
both. So like,
Yeah, I like that. And I think that you just hit the nail on the head with
yeah,
all those.
that's it right there.
Had to pull up my old head, the little old head things, right, real quick.
Sales sheet.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
yeah, you said it 100% right. I don't think you can say it better.
yeah, and we'll get into it in the Eastern Conference episode. But yeah, I mean, if do you have anything else on the Pistons before we wrap this one up? Yeah, that'll be it for the Pistons episode. This was an interesting one. We're approaching the end of the Eastern Conference. Next episode will be in Milwaukee. Episode after that will be Indiana. Then the episode after that will be the Eastern Conference predictions episode. We shall see you in the Milwaukee episode.